There you are.
I'm coming to you from my lab, which is a study in chaos.
We'll take you any way we can get you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So I saw Zay in the room earlier, but I don't see him now. I don't know if he had to go or if he's coming back in, but certainly I can just talk to you, and I'm honored to do that.
Well, I'm sure Zay's coming back. He said he was going to be here. I don't know. He's basically a little bit on the road, so he may have some net issues.
Yeah, no problem. And I just saw Zay. So Zay was at Project Voice 100 in Chattanooga. So I just saw him yesterday and was delighted to do that. So we'll get started because you've been gracious in allowing us to go over time to now. Let's start with, tell us your interest. So you've been part of a lot of different things. People can go Google you. You don't need to belabor that, but Atari, Chuck E. Cheese, tons of stuff. You've been a successful entrepreneur many times over. What interests you in voice?
I like the whole idea of synthetic players. I'm kind of a game guy deep down in my DNA. And synthetic players to me are a very interesting thing where you can have a competitor that is synthetic, it's AI driven. And part of that, now we can give voice and you can have dialogue with these synthetic players. And I've always been interested in games and boundary levels. That is, when two continents collide, that's where the earthquakes and the volcanoes happen, where on the edge, on that interaction. Look at media, movies, theater, what have you. Look at games. What happens when games and media collide? Like there's a game, Pong was a game, and then there's a movie. Gone with the Wind was a movie. But somewhere in between is something very interesting. And one of the things that Zay and I are working on is this concept we call conundrum, which is, can you play a game on the streaming services like Netflix, like what have you, and respond with voice, because that's natural. One of the problems you have with the objective of a movie is for you to lose yourself. That is, you transport yourself into the movie, so you leave your body. The minute you're asked to respond, you're pushed back into your body. So there's a little bit of a conundrum there. What we want to do is, by using natural voice, be like a very vociferous audience where the audience can say, look out, look behind you, turn left, don't trust them. This person is cheating on you. And all of a sudden, I believe that it buffers that pushing you back in your body from a narrative. That's maybe a little too complex, but
no, I think that's great. And it's good to hear your thoughts and perspective on it. So you have been around a lot of different types of technology. You've been early to a lot of different types of technology, and then you've been successful with a lot of different types of technology. Is there anything when there's a number of things I think I could point out that are different about the voice landscape than maybe the other types of technology you've been part of, but I want to just pose the question, what do you see when you look at the voice landscape that concerns you to where the path that you've taken with other types of technology to success may not be as doable this time around with voice? Are there any, or if there are, what are they?
I'm actually quite encouraged. I mean, I think the progress in natural language understanding is phenomenal. It's actually better than I expected. And what I like is I feel like I am a user of innovation as opposed to a creator of innovation. I like to innovate, but really close to the consumer. That is, I'm not a primary researcher. I'm a secondary researcher, and I like to use things that are a little bit worked out a little bit. I can say right now that I have a very, very smart house. I can turn on all kinds of things, with my voice. And one irritation that I want somebody to work on a little bit is, and maybe it exists, I just don't know about it, but it's context. Like I've got enough different things that all of a sudden I have to remember now, in order to turn on that light, what did I name it? And I'd really like to be able to just be in my bedroom and say, lights on, as opposed to bedroom sphere light on, you know, and that kind of thing, because truly the specificity that is required when you name each switch, each object, drop into, somebody to have a conversation, remembering that particular item. Is it sufficient to say kitchen one, kitchen two? Which one is which? And that's my only little current irritation.
So you're touching on something interesting with that, which is, we've all been through this pandemic period where privacy has taken a back seat. And we've talked about this throughout the day today. We talked about it, Project Voice 100 earlier, physically. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll be talking about it for years to come, possibly, probably the rest of our lives. So it's taking a back seat during the pandemic. But now that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, what are you hearing? People talking about privacy again. You're talking about wanting more context, wanting that deeper dive, wanting the technology to go further. Not everybody may agree with that. Your thoughts on privacy as it relates to voice?
Wow, that's a good one, because it's actually a debate that I have with my wife. I mean, she believes that she's being listened to all the time, and and that the wake word is just a head fake. She even has a friend who did a test on Google Home, in which they decided that they were going to have conversations in front of the Google Home about something that was totally out of context for them, and so they did that, and they, in terms of positive feedback, all of a sudden the very items that they were talking about all of a sudden popped up on their on their homepage when they were doing a Google search. Now, was that anecdotal? I don't know. But they're convinced it was aha. you know, uh, and they're not happy with it. I, for one, I abandoned the concept of privacy and secrets several years ago. I said, to do anything other than that is illusory. And so, just don't do anything that you need to keep a secret. It's the old story in the Puritan era. You were not allowed to have drapes on your windows because they said it's not appropriate that you are able to hide. Well, that's going a bit too far, but I think that that the whole idea of do I really care that my data sources are contextual with what I'm interested in, I'm not bothered by it. But but I know I may be a minority there.
I really don't have a sense for that either. I think that we've been so sidelined with different conversations that we never ever expected to have over the last 12 to 15 months, that who's to say that now that we start to emerge, we know everybody's different, the whole world's different, what percentage that will be. I think that's well put. And also, to your point, I've got a very good friend of mine that works for Intel, has worked for Intel for over a decade, and he also is convinced that things are listening all the time. And when he'll go on Facebook, he'll see some ad, and he's like, "How do I possibly see that ad?"
Yeah.
And the only time I talked about it was with my mom on the phone or something. And so I hear that 100%. Tell your wife she's right on.
Well,
uh,
one of the things that we're playing around with right now is, as you know, we have an Echo enabled board game called Saint Noir, purchasable by an Amazon. Did very well, won the innovation of the year for well, at this conference last year,
yes.
as the CES Innovation of the Year and the Cappy Award. So it was very gratifying for that. But we're asking the question now: what if you can play the game on Google Video, or I mean Amazon Video or Netflix or what have you? I don't know if you saw the Netflix Dark Mirror Bandersnatch, which was it wasn't voice, but it would have been better if it had been voice. And the voice interaction between the Amazon Echo and the other things are really, really cool. So um, we really want to expand voice into the gaming domain even more. We're we're doing another project called Dead Giveaway, which is another murder mystery thing that is a little bit darker.
I'm looking forward to experiencing that. Let me ask you, I got a couple more questions for you. And again, just very grateful for you and your contributions to this space, and your generosity, your time, and your expertise. So there is a company that was at Project Voice 100, where Zay was in Chattanooga just yesterday. And the name of the company is Constant Companion. They presented it earlier today. They are a great example of how there's a little bit of convergence, I guess is a good word, across voice. Because these platforms, these companies that have been working on voice for some time have now achieved, some of them have achieved enough critical mass to where they're starting to think about content. And I'm seeing this in healthcare, I'm seeing it in banking, I'm seeing it in automotive for sure.
Oh yeah.
I'm seeing it in hospitality. So, you know, if you went back 3 years ago, um, people creating voice games, you were one of the first. There's several, prominent players creating voice games, doing a phenomenal job. They're sitting around thinking, am I too early? Did I arrive a little too early at this party? Coming out, into now sitting here in 2021, I'm seeing so many players who are dominant enough in their fields, and they're serving enough customers to where they now have this additional content need, where whether it's games, whether it's stories or whatever, they need to use that and supplement that, whether it's someone aging in place at home with a healthcare solution, whether it's somebody in a car with a voice solution in the car. I want to ask you if you're seeing some of that same thing, and how you feel about now being the time for those people like you working with voice and entertainment, if it's ready to take the next step.
The answer is Absolutely. And I can make a generalized statement about being early. As an entrepreneur, what you want to do is you want to make money, but you also want to gain knowledge. And the ability to gain knowledge is actually the bedrock of your future. And so being early, you get more knowledge than anybody else sooner, which is an asset that your company has that you cannot, you can't hypothecate. And so um, often when you're too early, it's hard to, get funding. Sometimes it's hard to get customers early on because the world hasn't quite figured out that they, need this, let alone want it. Because there there's two or three phases. When you innovate, you have to teach people that there's something there that they haven't heard of before. Then you have to convince them that they want it. And sometimes that's a bridge too far. And so economically, it can be, you have to struggle a little bit. But if you build on rock and you have stick to it, because people think of me as being an innovator. I'm I cheat. I I read science fiction, and I feel like all the great inventions have already been put down on the pages of novels because they don't actually have to do it. you know, you know, but the ideas are there, and the way the world works is there, and the use cases are there. And so all you have to do is kind of read science fiction as future history, and you can pretty much figure out a pathway forward. And I really encourage a entrepreneur to be a science fiction reader to figure some of this stuff out.
To I'll ask you one more question, just riding right off of that. So in science fiction, we've seen pandemics. One of my favorite books growing up was The Andromeda Strain.
Oh yeah.
And then I love the movie, and even though the movie was kind of whack, like my parents were like, "Why? How could anyone possibly enjoy that?" I enjoyed that, and there's been other tales, related to pandemics as well. Just stepping back a minute from the voice conversation we've had, and just to a broader view. Do you feel like, there's some people who have put out there that, they feel like we'll be in a roaring 20s situation again, after this, where there's been such pent up demand, pent up energy, kept in a bottle, that is just ready to explode. And that's just going to propel us for the next few years. And then I've read other things that sort of don't believe that at all. I don't know where I fall. I'm curious for your thoughts on what we're about to see from a macro level, economically, and business wise, primarily over the next couple of years.
I think we're going to do quite well in the next couple of years, in terms of the economic growth and kind of getting back to a new normal. But one of the biggest things that I think is going to happen is there is a sharpening, or it's brought into clear relief the people who want to live on the 1 sigma risk level and the 5 sigma risk level, and I've seen it in my own environment here, that the calculation of risk is all over the map, where I believe some people are living their life right now with a risk that they would, if applied to other things, they would never cross a crosswalk. They would never drive a car, you know, in terms of dealing with pandemics, because when you get into certain risk profiles, the probability of mortality uh, because of that is de minimis. Uh, you know, it's clear out in the 4 and 5 sigma, probability scales. And so, what I question is, after vaccines, after the world opens up again, will those people continue to operate around things with disease that are out in the 5 sigma probabilities? And I don't know that. But that will be what I call a big drag anchor on the economy. If that number is a large number, um, that will be a problem. I don't think it's going to be. I think that there will be I'm hoping that there will be the classification of obsessive compulsive disorder, or acrophobia, or there's all kinds of phobias that are going on. Will there be more phobias around pandemics? I think so. But will it be 2%? Will it be 10%? Will it be 15%? Uh, that will be the operative question. And I think that it will start higher and tail off, but there may be a long tail as well.
No, I love that. Yeah, and these are conversations my wife and I have had as well. It's because she, as I've talked about before, she'll be watching Friends, or we'll be watching Friends at night, which is on Nick at Night now, which is itself is a travesty.
Yeah.
But she'll see those people, those actors and actresses sitting on that orange couch, and she'll make a comment, they're too close. And we've talked about it before. It's like, the heck you mean they're too close? It's this we are changed. We've been traumatized and we're changed. And
I haven't been.
well, I've gone back and forth. I've been out traveling the United States since January, and people thought I was nuts, and maybe I am. But I tell you, I have seen the country, and it's not all positive.
No.
And I don't know what we're dealing with. I thought maybe a couple of different points I did. I definitely don't. And so I'm encouraged just to hear you talk about what is, in essence, an awakening that everybody has to have, are you going to watch the world go by, or are you not, basically? But I just thought I had to ask you that since I had you.
Well, it's actually an age-old question. Everybody takes different attitudes about the personal risk. Some people will skydive, some people will not. you know, and so there's this whole idea of rock climbing and adventure sports and things like that, which are on a very, very different risk reward level than other people. And I think that's the normal condition. How this will escalate that's a really good question.
It's been a pleasure to have you be part of Project Voice Worldwide.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
and yeah, and it's a pleasure to watch what you do and to watch what Zay does as well. I don't know how you found each other exactly, but it's great that you did.
He is such a breath of fresh air in my life. I come up with the ideas, he can make anything look pretty.
Yeah.
It's just great.
And people lose sight of how famous he is, you
Yeah.
know, and
Well, he basically just was crushing it, and continues to, with everything CGI. He's one of the pillars.
Yeah, yeah. So he, look, we're grateful for both of y'all. And Nolan, thank you for being patient with us today. And we look forward to our next time encountering you and your work. Thank you for being part of Project Voice Worldwide.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm going to put you back as attendee. Thank you very much. And that wraps us up for today. Tomorrow, we've got an email coming out about the schedule. It's action packed, and it will conclude with Mark Cuban, another legendary entrepreneur, and we'll get his thoughts on voice as well. Thank you for being part of Project Voice Worldwide. We hope to see you tomorrow.